there are days with Rosco that I have come to recognize before they fully arrive. Something in the quality of his energy when the morning starts. Not the usual alertness, not his normal readiness for the walk. This is different, an erratic, tense aliveness that feels like it has nowhere to go. Like he is wound up past his usual baseline and doesn't quite know what to do with the excess. He wants to play. He wants something. He follows me from room to room while I try to work, inserting himself into my line of sight, nudging, circling, asking in the only language he has for something he cannot quite name. On these days, he is not the Rosco who can settle on his bed while I take a call. He is not the Rosco who moves through a calm morning at his own pace. He is a dog running at a frequency that is too high for the ordinary day to contain. The honest thing I have to say about these days is that they test my patience. Not in a dramatic way, in the quiet, sustained way of something that keeps interrupting, keeps demanding, keeps pulling your attention away from what you were trying to do. There is a version of me that reads this as Rosco being deliberately difficult. That version is wrong, and I know she is wrong, but she shows up anyway on the hard days, and I have to intentionally set her aside. What I tell myself on those days is this: he is telling me something. He is not trying to annoy me. He is a nervous system communicating a need it does not have words for, through the only channel available to it, which is behavior. That reframe does not make the day easier, but it changes what I do with it. And that, in a household like mine, is often the whole difference. This is Under the Same Roof. I'm Jennyfer Tan, professional dog trainer and certified family dog mediator, and this is episode 14. This episode is about the dog who also has a lot going on. Not the reactivity on walks, we've covered that. Not the big visible moments of struggle that are easy to recognize and respond to, but the dog inside the household, on the days when his nervous system is running past its usual baseline and nobody around him necessarily knows why. The days that require something extra from you on a day when you may not have extra to give. And the recognition, which arrived gradually and without announcement, that I had been here before, just not with a dog. I did not sit down one day and decide to look for the parallel between Roscoe's hard days and my son's hard days. I did not approach it as an intellectual exercise or a professional observation. It assembled itself gradually, the way understanding tends to in this household, without announcement, over months and years, until one day it was simply undeniable and I couldn't remember when I hadn't known it. My son has days like this too. Not identical. They are different beings with different wiring and different histories, and the comparison only goes so far, but recognizably similar in their texture. The days when he hasn't slept well, or the night was too warm, or something accumulated in his nervous system that didn't fully discharge before the next day began. On those days, he is extra. That's the word I keep coming back to. Not worse, not broken, not behaving badly. Extra. Running at a higher frequency than the ordinary day was built to contain. On those days, the usual routine is not sufficient. Something more is needed, or something different. Sometimes it is more output, more movement, more stimulation, more of the thing that burns off the excess energy before it turns into friction. Sometimes it is more regulation, something slow and absorbing and sensory that brings the frequency down gradually rather than burning it off. The art of it, which took me years to develop with my son, and a shorter time with Rosco because I had already done the work once, is learning to read which kind of extra this particular day is asking for. With my son, that knowledge accumulated over 2 decades. I built it slowly, through guessing wrong and adjusting, through the gradual accumulation of knowing what the signals meant and what different responses produced, through the kind of deep familiarity that only comes from sustained, attentive presence over a very long time. With Rosco, I built it faster. Not because he is simpler, he is not, but because I already knew the shape of the problem. I already knew that extra is a communication, not a behavior problem. I already knew that the answer is never to push back harder, or shut it down, or wait for it to pass on its own, but to read what's being asked and respond to the need underneath the behavior. I knew this because I had learned it the harder way first. In the early days, when Rosco had one of these high-frequency mornings, I would guess, is it a walk? Is it play? Is something physically wrong? I would try one thing and then another, working through a mental checklist, while he continued to circle and nudge and insert himself into everything, while I continued to try to hold my patience and my focus and my work at the same time. Gradually, over months, that changed. Not through any formal process. Through watching him the way you watch someone you live with closely enough that their patterns start to become legible, picking up on the details that don't announce themselves, building a felt sense of what different kinds of extra look like and what each one is actually asking for. I learned that some of his high-energy days are about needing to burn something off, an extra sniff walk, longer than usual, with no agenda except following his nose wherever it wants to go, the kind of walk that looks purposeless from the outside and is deeply purposeful from the inside, because it lets his nervous system do the thing it was built to do. Process the environment, gather information, move through the world at his own pace, on his own terms. I learned that other days are about needing to settle something that won't settle through movement, a bully stick. Something to choose slowly for a long time, the kind of sustained, absorbing activity that occupies the jaw and the focus simultaneously and brings the frequency down, gradually rather than burning it off all at once. I am not always right. There are still days where I offer the walk, and what he needed was the chew, or vice versa, and we both have to try again. But the guessing has been replaced, mostly by something closer to knowing, a sense of this particular dog, on this particular morning, carrying this particular thing, needing this particular response. That sense didn't come from a training manual. It came from paying attention over time to one specific being, which is, I realize, exactly what it sounds like to describe what I learned to do with my son. There is emerging research suggesting that dogs can exhibit traits that parallel what we see in ADHD: impulsivity, difficulty with self-regulation, high reactivity, persistent trouble settling. This research is early, the science is still developing, and I want to be careful not to overclaim it. I am not saying Rosco has ADHD. I am not saying that diagnosis maps cleanly from human neurology to dog neurology. What I am saying is that the behavioral profile the research describes, the dog who runs hot, who struggles to regulate, who responds to the environment with an intensity that exceeds what most dogs show, who has days when the ordinary container just isn't enough, that profile is recognizable to me. I have lived with it. I live with it still. And what the research does not yet account for, because research tends to describe traits rather than the lived experience of managing them, is what it is actually like to be the human in that household, the one who has to hold their patience on the high-frequency days, the one who has to remind themselves, sometimes out loud, sometimes silently in the middle of a work call, while a dog circles their desk, that the behavior is communication and the communication deserves a response. The one who is doing all of this while also managing a job and a household and a neurodivergent family member who is also, on some days, extra. What the research also doesn't account for is what happens when you have already done this work. When you come to the high-frequency morning, not as a surprise, but as a familiar territory, because you have been navigating exactly this kind of nervous system for years. When you already know, at a cellular level, that this is not defiance. It is a being trying to tell you something important in the only language it has. That prior knowledge does not make the days easier, but it makes them less confusing. And less confusion in a household like mine is not a small thing at all. I want to say something carefully here, because it is speculative, and I want to hold it as such. I am not claiming more than I can support. I am just telling you what I have observed over years of watching two specific beings in one specific household. I have wondered whether some of what passes between Rosco and my son is a kind of recognition, not conscious, not emotional in the way we mean that word between humans, but something in the nervous system register, a resonance between two beings who experience the world at a similar frequency, who both run hot, who both need more than the ordinary container provides, who both communicate need through behavior in ways that are easy to misread as difficult, as deliberate, as a choice. My son, on his extra days, is not trying to be hard to manage. Rosco, on his, is not trying to be annoying. They are both, in their different ways, asking for something their environment is not automatically providing. And they have both, over years of living together, stopped having to explain that to each other. The bond between them did not arrive the way I imagined when we brought Rosco home. It arrived slowly, without announcement, through the accumulation of ordinary days and ordinary mornings, and the slow building of something that is harder to name than I'd like it to be. But I have come to believe that part of what made it possible, part of what allowed two beings who can both be a lot to eventually find ease with each other, is that they are, in some fundamental way, familiar to each other. They recognize something, not in words, in frequency. I don't need that to be scientifically provable to believe it is real. Next episode, I want to map something that I think has been implicit in this series for a while and deserves to be made explicit. The sensory profiles of your child and your dog, where they clash, where they align, and what happens when you put them side by side and actually look at them together. Because sometimes the friction in a household isn't about behavior at all. It's about two nervous systems responding to the same environment in ways that were never going to be compatible without some deliberate understanding of what each of them is actually experiencing. I'm Jennyfer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof. Understanding before strategies. Always